By doing this work, we know that there's something powerful about how the human heart opens in the presence of other open-hearted humans.
Welcome, everybody. My name is Drew Horning, and this podcast is called Love's Everyday Radius. It's brought to you by the Hoffman Institute, and it's stories and anecdotes and people we interview about their life post-process and how it lives in the world, radiating love. In this episode of the Hoffman Podcast, we talk about the legacy of Raz Ingrasci, founder of the Hoffman Institute Foundation, and the conversation that you're about to hear was recorded on December 19th. And it is with great sadness that we share that Raz passed away unexpectedly on December 31st. This is the same day that he formally stepped back from his day-to-day role at Hoffman alongside his wife, Liza. We offer this information just to provide context and to help frame the conversation that you're about to hear. Thank you. Matt.
Drew.
How are you?
I'm doing really well, thank you. Yeah, how are you doing?
I'm great. It's always nice when Hoffman teachers get together. There's a deeper level of presence, it feels like.
Yeah, I know so often we're working with different teams or away from each other, so it's really nice to be here with you today.
I'm really excited for this conversation, in part because among many other things we get to talk about, we're also going to introduce you as the Chief Executive Officer. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it. You know, I've been working in this organization for over 18 years now. And, you know, the last, I'd say 10 years, I've been in significant leadership roles here and working closely with Liza and Raz and, you know, preparing for this next transition into what we're referring to as Era 3.0 at Hoffman. And, you know, stepping into the CEO position feels right and natural for me. And I'm also excited about all of the opportunities for the other leaders here in this organization, as Liza and Raz have really prepared us to take this organization forward and continue to steward this really wonderful mission that we have.
They have done that well, haven't they? They have prepared for their eventual retirement and supported the elevation and the leadership arising within.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've been talking about it for years. It might not have been apparent to everyone that this was in progress and in process for a long time, but they've long dedicated themselves to ensuring that the Hoffman Institute and this process, you know, continues with the same quality of, you know, product, but also the same generosity of heart and spirit that they've, you know, committed to it. And, you know, they've really imparted that on all of us who have leadership roles in the organization.
So when you talk about 3.0, can you speak a little more about that?
Yeah. So, you know, over the last, you know, kind of 2 years, I'd say, we've been in a strategic planning process as well, accompanying the succession planning. So I think you had some involvement in that. Many of the people in the organization, our board of directors, many other external kind of partners and stakeholders contributed to really exploring what our plan is across the next 5, 7, 10 years, which was a really exciting process. Succession planning was just a portion of that. We were looking at much more than that. And as we worked as a team to look at what does Hoffman need, it was really clear that there was 3 different eras, or there had been 2 eras. There was the time with Bob Hoffman, of course, the founder of the process, you know, all the growth and magic that occurred from, you know, the inception of the Hoffman process all the way through to the time that Raz and Liza came in. And among other things, I think they helped to professionalize the organization. It's the time where the Institute became a nonprofit, which opened up the opportunity to make it accessible to so many other people. And, you know, as we look at what's next, you know, after 35 years of their leadership and, you know, 20 plus years of Bob's leadership before that, it really became clear that there's a demarcation of this new era, which, you know, we're still defining what that era will be.
But it's a big deal.
It's a big deal.
It is.
Yeah. and I'll say this, like Raz and Liza, beyond preparing us to run the organization, these are two individuals who have committed their life to the human potential movement. And so, the mentorship they've provided many of us, and I'd say, you've benefited from it as well, Drew.
Absolutely.
Is one in which, it's like really a respect and an honoring of a lineage of sorts, in which this, work that we do, the Hoffman Process, has been passed on through many tremendous teachers and many other people that helped, support the growth of the programs. And we see it now as evidenced by this incredible desire that people have to do the process. And so, a large part of this coming era is how do we actually meet the demand that we've created, which is really extraordinary at the moment.
It's considerable. But I want to go to this generosity of Raz and Liza, because they could have held it tightly, they could have made it all about them, but they were constantly passing the ball, spreading the love, being generous in allowing people to emerge underneath them.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. And, I think I've been a tremendous recipient of that generosity. I've spent a lot of time with them and picking their brains and preparing, not just to know how to run the organization and the ins and outs and the mechanisms to do that, but also to really recognize that, and I don't want to make this sound like it's me. I'm carrying a new title going forward, but I think all of us are carrying on something that we really hold as a tradition. We use the word lineage a lot when talking about it, and I think that's an apt description of what this is. And in that, it's there's a tradition within that lineage that, can only be passed on through, kind of direct experience with one another. Like there's no manual to guide doing this work. Those can support, but truly it is about the interaction. It's the person-to-person relationship and the transmission of, all of the good knowledge and information and the nuances that come with that. And
there's a kind of steeping in it, where you're around it enough, you're in with the people enough, that's how it kind of gets in your bones.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that, steeping. And, I think you really have to dedicate yourself to allow that to kind of penetrate and be there. And, and their way of mentoring for all of us has given that opportunity to really take on, knowledge beyond what could just normally be communicated. So you talked about earlier about enrollment and expanding,
and when I think about that, I think one, capacity, the other, wait lists. And we all know that wait lists have been a thing. How are you going to navigate the growth of Hoffman as we step into this 3.0?
Yeah. So in the strategic plan, I think this was one of the first things that we looked at addressing. So it was, a strategic area of focus is really about expanding our capacity. And I want to be clear, it's not growth for growth's sake. It's really to meet the demand, but also, the mandate is to do so with the same level of quality of engagement that we've always had and the quality of the programs. And so we're really committed to that. And so there's kind of three pillars to our growth, right? One, you need the demand. We have that, and that's been persistent for the last 5 years.
All right.
We need the teachers. Quality teaching is, inherent to this process, people that can shepherd people appropriately through the work. And then we need facilities. So our work right now is working on how do we train more teachers. You were just involved, as I was, in hiring 8 new people to be teacher candidates in 2026. And then we have the desire to increase our facility capacity. We have a new home that we're moving into.
That's super exciting.
It is. It's very exciting. And we've been progressing really wonderfully in creating this new home for Hoffman. For those that aren't aware, we'll be moving into it in April. And it's called Santa Sabina. So it'll be the new home of Hoffman. And yet that doesn't address the capacity issue. We're also looking at how do we expand into more locations. So we're looking for other retreat sites to continue to build and grow into. And we recognize that, in order to meet that demand, we have to find those locations. And so that's a big part of this next period of time for us.
So tell me about alumni. How are you going to navigate? Because I think there's a vision for how to hold grads, isn't there?
Yeah, I think that's another thing that's been really emerging, both in the strategic planning process, and then in recent months, I've been on a little bit of a listening tour, along with some board members, some other key folks at the Institute. And, one of the things that keeps emerging as a desire is that people want to stay more connected with the organization after the process. And so, we're really listening to that and exploring how can we meet our graduates or our alumni, if you will, in a place that gives them, the resources, the assets, the connection to the Hoffman community that they're really looking for. And I think we're really looking at expanding that reach and building some initiatives around that. And, Bob Hoffman, I think, he, and I think rightly so, he had the idea that people come do the process and they get the benefit of the process that they come to do, and that then they go and they live their lives and they don't create, some attachment to an organization to drive their growth or their well-being.
This is important.
Yeah.
Like, we need to pause here, because a lot of times that entry-level offering is the gateway to all kinds of additional products and offerings, and it's just a whole web that you get pulled into, but not what Bob believed.
Right. And that's not to diminish any of the other organizations that are out there putting good work into the world and trying to make it a viable business. And, and yet I would say that, one of the things that we hear time and time again about the Institute and the Hoffman process is that we operate it with such integrity, that people they don't always know everything that they're going to do in the process, but they know that they're choosing in, and that the organization is putting its best foot forward from the outset and not holding anything back. There's no upsell to be had in the process. Everything we offer after the initial process is ancillary to the process, but it can be ancillary with tremendous support. And so we want to build upon that. But I think more than anything, it's what we're hearing is people want deeper connection to the Hoffman community. And even, today, I know we're on a podcast, but today I'm going to do a graduate program after this. And, one of the things I love about our Q2, the 3-day kind of primary graduate program we offer.
Quadrinity 2.0, by the way, for those.
Yeah, or it was initially the Quadrinity squared.
Oh.
Right. So to the second power.
I see.
Right. And so we call it the Q2 for shorthand. And I think everybody in the graduate community calls it the same. But there's something about entering a room of other Hoffman graduates where, there's an open-heartedness, there's a commitment to learning and growth, and, people that are, essentially strangers in the kind of typical definition of the word, feel connection almost immediately. And it allows them to really enter into the work, feeling the safety of the group. And we know by doing this work, we know that there's something powerful about how the human heart opens in the presence of other open-hearted humans.
All right, just slow down there. The human heart opens in the presence of other open-hearted humans. The power of group work cannot be overstated.
Yeah. And, it's important for us as an organization and as teachers to really make sure that container for that work to thrive is a safe and inviting space. And so I think we started this in talking about what we're planning for alumni, right? It's like more opportunity to enter into those spaces that invite them into deeper levels of connection and intimacy, and where they can kind of continue their work with other people who they know are supporting, that same progression of growth, development, healing, if you will.
They really want that, don't they?
They do, yeah. Yeah, and I think we've, in some sense, not that we've underestimated it, but I think we, have been so busy trying to keep up with demand that, and particularly after the the pandemic and all that we've gone through as an organization with changing sites and changing sites again and just keeping up with the basic demand and hiring and training teachers and staff to scale up, it's, caused us to, kind of keep on a certain trajectory. And, this strategic planning and this succession have allowed us to take a step back, really view things more holistically, talk to and listen to more people. And what we're discovering is all very heartening because people are saying, hey, we want more of this.
Do you know what that's going to look like?
Not entirely, no. And I think we're going to invite our community to be involved in helping us, figure out what that's going to look like. And many are already coming forward that have, entered into the initial conversation, and they're coming forward with their ideas, their contributions, what they'd like to see. And, a lot of really wonderful themes are emerging, but it's very much what have been suggesting, which is our graduates want more connection with one another.
Yeah. I just love it. An organization whose tagline is when you're serious about change is now entering a phase where we're changing, we're growing, and we're not exactly, this is the thing about change, is you're never sure the final outcome, what it's going to look like. You have a sense of it and you move towards it, but what it unfolds to is still in the unknown phase, right?
Yeah, and in some ways, I suppose change is an apt word, but it doesn't feel like change so much as it feels like a natural progression. Right? Like what we've built, and this has occurred over the history of Hoffman, is, it's building upon the successes that came before while staying true to, the core purpose or mission, if you will. And
that's a fine balance that we seem like we've done a good job.
Yeah.
Building upon the successes that came before while staying true to the mission of Hoffman.
Yeah, and one of the, in one of the meetings I had, with some graduates in New York City, there was a conversation about change that emerged. And, after that, we received a message from a couple of people that had attended that. And they said, hey, I just really want to make sure that when we're talking about this, you're not talking about changing the process, right?
So good.
And I think I want to assure that, the process, we are not a Hoffman Institute without the Hoffman Process. And the Hoffman Process is core to what we do. It's what we are known for. It's what we, I think, as an organization, it's what we most desire to contribute because we know the potency of what the process brings. So, I want to be very clear, we're not looking to change that. The process is always adapting and we're always looking to improve and make the process better. But, what people have experienced and how they've grown to love the Institute, I think I want to be clear, we're staying true to that.
That's important, isn't it?
Yeah, but we also recognize there's more that we can do because there's nothing, better than having a happy and healthy community of graduates who are extending, what they've learned and how they've grown and how they love into their greater communities.
Yeah. I think Bob also didn't, just back to that piece around 1.0 and how he held it, there's a propensity now to be, and we talk about it in the process, to be an endless fix-it project. And I think part of what that offered was that don't keep working on yourself. Don't keep fixing yourself. Live your life was intentional rather than the ongoing, need to engage in introspection and endless work on self.
Yeah. And I think the words you're using there, fix-it project, are, the really important thing to touch on because I think at the core of what we do, it's not actually a sense that something needs to be fixed. It's a returning to yourself. And, if you recognize your wholeness, if you recognize, who you truly are, your spiritual self, absent the patterns, there's nothing to fix. Yes, there might be some flawed strategies that our patterns have helped to create, but if we work through those patterns, if we deepen our connection to ourselves, there's nothing to fix. So I think, Bob's ultimate desire to have people, go live their life fully and wholly as themselves, free from, or at least diminishing the impact of those patterns, I think that's still something that we aim for. And we also know that, look, it sometimes requires a little extra connection, a little extra support after the process. And so we hear our graduates. We will look to, better incorporate that and make clear, because there's also one thing I recognized in these conversations is sometimes people don't actually even know all that we offer. And so, some of this too, and I think the podcast that, and your contribution in this helps people connect and helps them feel the connection to the Hoffman community. And this podcast team has done a great job of creating that. But somewhere in there, we've missed in our messaging so that graduates actually know what's available to them and how they can pursue that and utilize the resources at their disposal after the process. And so, I think that's another commitment is how we meet our graduates and our messaging, and we'll look to further improve that as well.
Yeah, so some messaging stuff, information, communication, some whole development of what that grad engagement looks like, but then also some work for you as you put your footprint on the organization as the new CEO. I imagine your plate is full, Matt.
Yeah, my plate is full, but we have an extraordinary team. So, there's even having this conversation with you, Drew, somewhat, uncomfortable to suggest that a spotlight, like a literal spotlight on me in this moment. And yet, one thing I want to really, share, and this because you're here in this organization, is that there is a tremendous amount of leadership. There's a tremendous love for this work in this organization. And, it's every person, which we're now over 120 people in the Hoffman Institute. It's every person contributing, to this mission and to what we want to create here. And so, yes, I have the honor of stepping into this role and being, seen in a certain capacity within it. And I want to be clear that everybody, is contributing to this in very meaningful ways. And I think that's one of the things that I love about what we've created here.
Yeah, I think a couple things are true. I want to agree with you on that first one, which is that to a person, if you talk to people who are employed by Hoffman, their passion for the process, their own experience, helping others in it, is profound. They're deeply committed to it. It's like in their cells, you can see it in their face. It's just alive inside them. And they have their own stories about their experience and about supporting others. And that's great because we're all rowing in the same direction. And Matt Brannagan, you are a humble leader. You're incredible. The way in which you serve and don't seek to take the spotlight, you pass the ball. It's not about you. You have a strong leadership style, but you're also very humble in how you do it. Where'd you get that?
Well, first, I appreciate you saying that. It is what I strive for. And, I think it's developed over time. I've had the great benefit of a lot of incredible mentors. Liza and Raz among them. There's another podcast guest that you had a while back, Tim Callan, who, as I would say, is the first meaningful mentor I had in my life. He came into my life before I did the Hoffman process. He was among the reasons, as well as my now mother-in-law, of why I did the Hoffman process. And, he taught me a lot about being a servant leader. And,
he's a humble guy himself.
He's a humble guy himself, right? He looks at leadership as a contribution to others. Tim and I both have a military background. He went officer corps, I was non-commissioned officer, but I learned a lot about leadership in my military time. And, there's many people have heard the phrase, like, leaders eat last. And that's actually true. Like on a given day when time allows in the military and you're out in the field and training and hot chow is available to you as a leader, your job is to actually serve your soldiers first. And then if food remains, then you eat.
So it's not just some random cliche.
No, it's not a random cliche. It's something that is instilled in that environment. And, look, it doesn't always happen that way, but that's the intention behind it, is to make sure everyone is taken care of. As a leader, it was one of your first priorities. Yeah. And that's, my goal always as a leader is to serve and support the people that both work for me. And in this, particular environment as an organization having retreats, that includes every person that goes through the process as well. So, that, kind of informs the way I try to approach my leadership and try to support those around me.
Yeah. For those who want to dig into you a little more, season 2, episode 22 is a fantastic conversation in our Hoffman Podcast library. Check it out. But let's move to, because you've done so much, you went back to grad school in addition to starting as a teacher and a coach, and then moving into being director of faculty for years, and then being chief operating officer. During that time, you also got your PhD in clinical psychology?
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah. Well, I will say I'm still completing my PhD, okay. So I'm finishing the dissertation phase. There was a time a few years back where I realized one goal that I had that I hadn't yet completed was to complete a PhD. I'd actually had a bit of a false start early on. Right as I became a teacher, I was in a dissertation program and found that I needed to give my full attention to being the teacher and coach I wanted to be. So I put pause on that. And in the pandemic, I decided to go back and pursue my degree. And so I'm working on finishing that right now.
Incredible. In addition to your humility, your work ethic, any time of day, I'm texting you, emailing you, the weekend, you are committed to Hoffman. It's great to have a leader who is going to work so incredibly hard. What's it like to sit down and talk about this and reflect? I know you're not a huge fan of getting in front of the camera, but...
Well, I wouldn't say I'm not a huge fan of it, but, it's a little, as you said, I do at least pretend to be humble. So I don't always like to talk a ton about myself, but I can. Mostly I would say, Drew, I recognize the honor that I'm stepping into. And I recognize that, a lot of people have placed their trust in me and are, relying upon me in certain degrees. Now, I don't want to shoulder too much of that, but, I think that strengthens my commitment to this organization and this work. And, also I'll acknowledge, we as teachers and employees of the Hoffman Institute, we still have patterns. So sometimes, my patterns of always being available and not setting boundaries, it probably serves the organization really well. But, at the same time, I do want to be available to people and I want to be present to the needs of this organization. And, it's easy to do when you love the work. And I think more than anything, that's what's been kind of present in my commitment to it is I love what we create here.
You do love it, don't you?
I do. I mean, I think the only thing I would say that is, a drawback of stepping into more executive leadership here is less time in the classroom as a teacher.
But you're still going to teach, aren't you?
I'm still going to teach a little bit, yeah. And,
keep it in your bones.
Yeah. But, there's something, and you know this as well as a teacher, there's something really powerful about being witness to people's transformation, not just hearing the stories. This podcast does a great job of kind of bringing people into the experience of other people's growth and transformation. But there's nothing quite like being in the classroom and experiencing it and the depth of contribution. My heart is blown up and, many times every week that I teach a Hoffman Process or every weekend that I teach a Q2 or quite often in my coaching. So, I recognize now the role's a little different in how that gets facilitated. But I'm glad to know that it's ongoing with many incredible teachers like yourself.
Matt, this is such a good conversation. I know you're a busy dude. You got a lot going on. So we won't keep you, but we are grateful you stopped by the podcast studios to give us your face, your voice, your wisdom, and your future 3.0.
Yeah. Thanks, Drew. I'm glad, and I'll come back anytime you guys want me to share some words.
And thanks for leading us. All 150?
20.
120.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Thank you for listening to the Hoffman Podcast. My name is Matt Brannagan. I'm the CEO of the Hoffman Institute Foundation and a Hoffman teacher. Our mission is to provide greater access to the wisdom and power of love within ourselves, in our relationships, and in the world. To learn more or to support our mission, we invite you to visit hoffmaninstitute.org.